This is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators, people I've worked with, other interesting people about the history of comics, superheroes, and the current state of the comic book industry. I also discuss current and upcoming projects, current events, and any other topics my guests might be interested in talking about. So subscribe and hit the like button. Help me grow this channel and promote indie comic book creators, publishers, and other people affiliated with the comic book industry. Your comments are appreciated. Get to it and leave feedback, good, bad, and otherwise. I am your host, Dennis Maloney, writer, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we spotlight good girls, bad girls, super babes, and superheroics in a classic, kind of golden agey style. Grab some snacks and enjoy. This is the Heroic Voice. Hi, this is Dennis
Hi.
Maloney. We have our first returning guest, Tim Burgard. And this time around, on what is today? It is August 17th, 2024.
Yeah.
He is going to be talking specifically about what his plans are for Indigo, the martial arts pseudo-demonic Japanese character who was actually created by Heroic Publishing's vice president, David Berg. But Tim wants to take that character and do some things with him, following up on the stuff that we did years ago with that character.
Yeah.
Tim? Hi.
Well, hi, I'm Tim. Um, yeah, there's so many half undone projects I've got in my life. If I'm getting back into comics again after so long, I want to at least tie up, some stories and maybe, explore some things that I was beginning to introduce. And it got to a point where we were doing the back story of Indigo, and yet in a way we didn't finish what was started at the very beginning, which was pretty much the prologue of this whole thing, where in the modern day, there's an attack on David and his niece Breeze.
Jim Coe. That's Indigo's name. Coe Industries.
Oh, is it Jim? I thought it was David. Okay.
No, David is David's name. David Berg.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got this whole thing confused. Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, believe me, I'll get it right on the book. The whole thing is, I'm looking at it very visually by the way. It's like I've been following along with the dialogue up to certain points, but I haven't got into the nitty gritty as we're doing it. But the overall idea was to bring in Japanese mythology into it to kind of explain, or maybe to hint where this character has come from, and also to elaborate on the villain. Why is he doing this? Well, we established that the villain is.
Hold on. You're about to start a recap, and I was thinking that maybe the thing to do right here is to provide a recap of what's already been done, right? To give some context for what you're about to talk about. Yeah, it's
Okay. Well, there was I think in the last time we talked, you went over basically why Indigo was printed in the first place. It was a benefit comic type of situation. So you came up with
six-page story that was meant to benefit Eclipse Comics after that flood that they had in the mid 80s.
Okay, and so you went ahead and did that. You published it, and was running in the back of Eternity Smith, a book
Yes.
that Rick Hoberg and I were working on at the time. And so Rick laid out the pages for the thing. I did more of a finished inking job on them, and I liked where it was going. And so we agreed that I would do installments of Indigo based on where we started or ended at the on the first story, on the first installment. The prologue is what I'm going to be calling it.
Okay.
All right, and so we sort of at the very end of that prologue, we have this shadowy hand with a chessboard, basically saying he's, ooh, finally I found you, So there was a reason, somehow this guy had a reason to bring Indigo into the open after decades, since the end of World War II, right?
Correct.
But we don't know the person that or the character that's kind of like asking the questions and is our stand-in as an audience is Seabreeze, because this is like news to her, that her uncle is somehow this nasty ninja guy that basically can take care of the whole thing. But anyway, so we go into the flashback where he's explaining the story about how this thing got started, and
Beautiful piece of work too, I have to say.
yeah, Willie Blyberg actually did a really nice job following my pencils on there. When we reprint this, most of that work is going to remain pretty much. I'm going to have to hopefully not stray too far from that style, but I think we'll get there. But the
You remember the basic story, or do you want me to?
Oh, sure. No, the basic story is he's basically explaining to his niece why or how this character Indigo even got started. I mean, if you wanted to just say him blurt out, "I'm possessed by the devil" or something like that, that's the quick explanation. But we go into when he was a child with his sister, and their father, their family was like a samurai family, was basically one of the a high-ranking family, but World War II basically drove them into destitution, and his sister, his older sister, became a prostitute, and he began defending her from rough treatment from other people, including U.S. soldiers and all that kind of stuff. Until his sister actually met an American GI who they fell in love, and they were going to, he was going to take her back to America and all that type of stuff. And at that point, Jim wants to explore something that's been calling to him. He wants to rediscover, martial arts and everything else. So he goes out into the wilderness. Well, in the meantime, their father, who's like totally disgraced and essentially puts out a hit on his own daughter, and it's sort of like what do they call that there? The honor killing. Almost an honor killing of his daughter and the American GI. But a shadowy super ninja basically saves them, and it turns out that that's her brother. But we kind of go quickly through that. It's like the brother manages to see them off safely, but the person who sent the assassins in their father's name basically says, just because they're in America doesn't mean they're safe. You do what I want you to do, and I won't have them killed, And so he ends up being an enforcer for the Yakuza till a certain point. He basically says enough is enough, and just doesn't kill the guy, but scares him to death, saying, I will visit upon you, the worst death you'll ever know, or something like that. And so for decades, the guy has left him alone until he's found, and this is at the end of the whole series, he's found a means to strike back, and that's where we ended it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that pretty close?
And that's what leads into the Japanese mythology, because the method that Atsumori, which is that's the guy's name, found was basically to summon Japanese oni, to send after Indigo, who he thinks is in fact an Oni himself.
Send something to kill him, the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm digging into the demonology a little bit, going back to the one of the first Japanese heroes, samurai heroes, who supposedly learned from another set of demons called the Tengu, who, when they appeared to humans or appeared as like priests, like monks, but with large noses.
Oh.
But they were associated as bird demons. And they're the ones that taught Minamoto, I believe, the his skills of war, and he turned around and became great, and had a clash with another a samurai clan, who that head of the Yakuza happens to be a descendant of. So we've got like two samurai enemies, two clans coming together in the modern world too, and that's part of the real history of Japan mixed in with this type of thing.
So you're providing a mirror essentially on what happened in the past, bringing it in contemporary.
Yeah, talking to Japanese people I know, there's really is still many of the wealthy people, the people with power in Japan, actually trace their names all the way back to highborn houses of samurai, oguns and the people that are like were running the show, one of them becoming the shogun. But there's almost a hierarchy of samurai people with samurai family names still in Japan. It took a big hit when World War II ended. There a lot of people definitely lost their status.
It doesn't surprise me. Japanese culture has always been based on family. It's that the money, the traditions, it all comes down generation by generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same
So
thing is true any place where there's essentially nobility. Right? You worry about the family, not about the individual.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk privately about how I want to do this. I wanted to introduce the tango for the first time, not the tango, the tango, the tengu. Not being Japanese, I don't know how it's pronounced. I've only seen it written. And I really enjoy this approach because it's a little bit, it's close to another approach to fairies that I've seen once before, where the fairies exist outside of time in the way that we know it, and it's kind of common that when a mortal enters the fairy world, they can think that they're there for 5 minutes and they'll come out and it's been decades. Everybody that knows is either died or extremely old or something like that. So I like to play with this thing of time, where when the myths and the creatures were around that we hear about today or through Japanese myth, time was not as narrow. The real world wasn't as hostile to mythological creatures and beings. But now time and reason and all of that, it's basically almost driven them out where they can't exist in our world, but they can still connect at certain places at certain times, and in ways they being outside of time, they are on a path that they can see the beginning and the end of. It's all the same. They can be at any point of that path. Doesn't matter to them. So it's a little esoteric, but that's the interesting thing about this, is that a human person goes in and he learns martial arts, but it doesn't take any time in the real world like it would take to get to be like a 4th degree black belt, and learn all the skills. Just of being a black belt in karate would take a long time, take decades. But when you're in that particular fairy world, everything is simultaneous. You're not only learning karate, you're learning swordsmanship, you're learning all this stuff, and it's happening simultaneously because there is no progression. There is no one thing and then another. It's all happening at the same time. And only there can a human do it, because outside, if they even, and that's how Indigo can exist, because Indigo can have that in his mind in the real world, whereas Jim would be driven mad.
Hmm.
You know.
So you in fact envision kind of a separation between Jim Coe and the person he becomes when he becomes Indigo.
Yeah, because he's carrying, the knowledge and the world that's timeless in him, and that cannot exist in his rational mind. He knows it's there, and it can take over. It could be whatever, but it's more than a lifetime's worth of work of knowledge that he's carrying around that he can't logically have.
So here's a question for you. You mentioned earlier on that Breeze, Jim's niece, is our window into this. How much
Mhm.
of the focus is actually going to be on when you do your graphic novel, which you envision this as, how much is the focus is actually going to be on her rather than on Indigo himself?
Well,
I
she
think,
actually is going to be hand in hand with him when the bad guys show up, and uh, I don't say it straight out, but we know that she's like an agent. She basically is an espionage agent.
yes, she is. She's an agent of the Federal Intelligence Services team, highly trained, and she uses this refers back to Eternity Smith, right? Skylark Smith, who's the leader of that group, uses a rock band touring internationally as a cover for the missions that they're sent on.
Yeah,
But Breeze took a little leave of absence when the trouble with her uncle came up. So we're looking at that period when she's not with the group of people she's normally with. She doesn't have all that backup. She's on by herself,
yeah,
except for the fact that her uncle is really, really good. Right?
yeah,
So it's a new
yeah. So
experience for her.
I'm implying that she's not just taking a break, but she's exploring a solo album, and that
Ah.
she's doing. And I want to have the ultimate fight happen in something, even though it's San Francisco, it's something resembling a Asian background. So I'd like to have the fight happen during a performance with the Kodo drummers, because she's a drummer for the band. You know, so
Yes, Breeze is in fact a drummer herself, right?
right. So she's going to be drumming with the Kodo drummers. So I figured that's going to be some nice visuals going in there.
Ah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, when you see my treatment, you'll get a general idea how I basically marry the things together. There's a couple of interludes that I want to introduce earlier on that wouldn't have made much sense, if we had them, if I even thought of it at the time, if we had it in the installments. But we have at one point him as a boy just going out into the mountains, and that's the last time we see him until he shows up as Indigo. I wanted to have a moment where he's experiencing as a mortal person the space, the timeless space, and at that point, the how weird it is that he's learning, instead of learning, martial arts one at a time, he's learning them all simultaneously, and how weird that would be if it weren't for this place that he's in.
That's interesting, very interesting. Just so people know, we are not going to make that treatment public. We want
Oh
to
yeah,
we
oh
want
yeah.
to
I'm
hold on
trying
to
not to
that.
be a spoiler here, but I'm
Yes,
just saying how
got to be
I'm
careful.
bringing Japanese mythology into this, and of course I'm going to be doing some more. I've already read a bunch of things, but I'd like to get a little bit more deeper into, specific names and places and stuff like that, because the Oni and the Tengu don't come from the same place. I mean, they met. I'm basically establishing that they used to be at war with each other. They're, and the the Oni basically like violence and war and destruction, and they're basically evil. But that part of it is because it's fun to them. You know, it's like their heaven is to be killing things, right? And so there's a Japanese mythological hell, and I'm kind of gonna look and see if there's some names and stuff I can use for the Tengu, how they basically do it. My concept is not that different than the Western idea of fairyland, and where and it's been done in so many different good ways. What was that? Something Norel, and anyway, there was a popular book that had everything to do with incursions into our realm of the fairyland, and Neil Gaiman, the way he handles it is like perfect, but there's a lot of fiction out there that explains just how nasty fairies are.
Yeah, fairies are not nice people.
No.
I should mention that if anyone is actually interested in seeing what was done with Indigo, back in the day, those issues of Eternity Smith that he appeared in are still available. You can certainly find them on eBay, or you could order them directly from the Heroic Publishing website, which is www.heroicmultiverse.com. I believe that was Eternity Smith Volume 2, the last 3 issues, right? Issues 7, 8, and 9, I think.
Didn't I do a fill-in issue that I ended up like penciling the first
Yes,
installment and have an Indigo thing in there?
yes, that is in fact where we published that prologue. You did a 20-page story,
Right.
Eternity Smith meeting Tesseract. It was 20 pages, and we filled out the issue with that 6-page Indigo thing. So you want to see basically a Tim Burgard, thing, grab that. Yeah, that was issue 7, volume 2, number 7 of Eternity Smith.
Yeah.
And then those 2 Indigo chapters that followed were in 8 and 9.
Now Willie inked me on that, didn't he?
I think he might have, yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean,
I think unlike the Indigo stories where I was a little tighter on penciling, I think I was a little bit looser because I thought I would give him the chance to do with my work what I was doing with Rick Hoberg's when he was just laying things out. And I probably asked a little too much.
it worked out well. I liked the visual
Thank you.
aesthetics of that. It was a
Okay.
nice change of pace. Your artwork is a little more kinetic, I think, than Rick's. Rick's is more straightforward and blocky. You seem to have a lot more fun with when you're
Well,
drawing.
I'm pushing it. It's like anytime I get a comic book project, I'm dying to break out of the storyboard rut. Not really a rut, but the idea of having things sequential, sequential panels that are all the same size. So you're always working with the same composition going through. The one thing that I like about storyboarding or comics is that you don't have to have word balloons, and then you're anything you write down there is like basically how it's supposed to be seen, but or draw.
Well, the best approach to comic book storytelling is minimize the word balloons. The artwork should actually carry the story, right?
Yeah.
The dialogue, the balloons should amplify that, but it should be the case in an extremely well done comic book that you don't even need to see the captions to follow what's going on.
Yeah, I did a backup on Savage Sword of Conan after Roy Thomas left, and this was kind of funny. I think I thought I was working the Marvel method, where they give you a story and block it out, and you draw it up, and then somebody adds dialogue and everything else in there. And I was shocked to see the printed thing. They didn't add any. It was me. It was. I think if there were any visual, sound effect words or anything, I put them in. you know.
Well, that is in fact quite a compliment, Tim, that
I
whoever the
was,
editor was didn't think it needed anything more than you put in there.
yeah, I was shocked.
Um,
It was a fun thing. My only problem, and it's not so much a problem. I mean, it was I got to do Conan. I got to do Conan professionally. But it was when Larry Hama was the editor, and I think I was told at the time that the um, the main customer base for Conan at the time, he said, were bikers.
really?
People, and all they wanted is there was really some violence and stuff. Like they weren't into any of the high fantasy kind of things or whatever. You know, he could have at least given me a story where there was a buxom babe or something, you know, that Conan could save. But it was the I'll tell you guys because it doesn't really matter. It was basically Conan. We see him. He's basically pursued by some mercenaries or whatever. He's already injured, and he takes shelter in this little hut where these two elderly people, like your mom, your grandma, and your grandpa, are. You know, Hyborian age version. But and then he ends up, killing them one by one as they're coming down the chimney or whatever. Um, Kills one of them with a cook pot, you know, and
Like I said, you have fun with
yeah,
with-
and I think in the end, the old guy is like it was the best sporting event he'd ever seen in his life. Like he had front seats at the Coliseum, and he'd be like, yeah. And then the little lady, her house is half destroyed, is going, oh no. And I think
She's
that
going
was
to have
like
to
the
clean up
humor.
after all of this. It's no wonder she was upset.
Yeah, she was expected to clean up. I figured that was probably the problem. The roof was destroyed, everything that was going on. So I mean, it was basically Conan having a very violent moment out in the out in
We
the
we have
suburbs.
digressed. I
Yeah,
he wanted this to be about Indigo, but that was cool. So,
yeah.
Conan is always cool. One thing that occurs to me, because I talked about the difference between your style and Rick's, that first chapter of Indigo that we did was a Rick Hoberg thing. It was laid out the way Rick thinks
Mm.
things. Then you came in and it got, much more kinetic. And the second chapter was, just, I think, and I'm thinking, right, do you have in mind the idea that it will become even more so as you go through the story you're telling, less with that, you know, what am I looking for? That sense of realism, maybe just like a little off or something.
Well, I was using some techniques that Rick is very straightforward with his storytelling. Um, I was using a couple of things that I liked being done by, say, uh, uh, Walter Simonson, Walt Simonson, for his Manhunter
Mhm.
series, where you
Walt
would,
uses a more minimalistic approach
well,
to,
his figures are kind of minimalistic, but his page layouts are very intricate,
yes.
and he would do things where you would have little tiny little frames showing real quick shots like that, of things that are happening. And I would throw in and some other people were doing this uh, on Hands of Kung Fu or the Master of Kung Fu for Marvel. Paul Galassi would be throwing in some decorative things going in there, kind of giving a feel of the place and time and whatever. So I was trying to bring a little of that into the page as well. And in some cases, like one of the pages for Indigo, because it is a montage type of thing, where you know different images are supposed to blend in together and not necessarily be consecutive moments in time. I have one dominant picture of Indigo with his arms clutched and all different things happening, like cars being,
I remember that page.
destroyed and all kinds of stuff. And uh, I like moments like that, especially in flashback situations, because you can get a lot of the feeling and a lot of things going on there without having to spell it out and take time to, but so I was given an opportunity to do quick shots, and that I meant I could do it flashier, you know, because again, this is a flashback, and we showed quite a few murders,
Oh, yeah.
the assassinations and stuff like that.
He was
Uh,
doing a lot of dirty work for the Yakuza back then.
yeah, he was the hitman. He was the main monster.
Mhm.
Um, and they pushed him a little too quick, too far.
One thing that we haven't mentioned is after he cut ties with the Yakuza, he came to the United States and started an electronics company, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I wasn't able to really figure how to integrate into this particular storyline and following through from where we were at, because there's a whole other adventure if we start talking about, whatever happened to, his sister and Breeze's dad and maybe Breeze's little kid. We don't know why they're out of the picture.
Well, Breeze, as I recall, did not have a very high opinion of her father. There was some indication that he left the the mother at some point for some reason, but we never knew
Well,
what the reason was.
there's the story. I didn't want to get into that. I wanted their portion of it to be done as soon as they left Japan for this particular thing. If we wanted to bring them back, as part of another plot or something like that, like uh maybe even not even, if we were to do a future story, maybe we don't even use Breeze. Maybe it's, you know, her dad or her mom or something like that. It's a
Yeah.
focal point.
Okay.
But
Let's talk about your time frame for this. Give people a sense of, in the best case scenario, when they might be able to expect some movement on this project. We're talking what, like a standard when it's all said and done, how big will it be? How many pages do you envision it? And what's your time frame?
my time frame is not very set. I mean, right now I'm 4 years away. Well, even less than that. I'd like to retire from what I'm currently doing uh, and not just a complete cutoff, but how retirement works, right?
No, no,
uh,
I don't. I have no intention of ever
I mean,
retiring.
I'm not retiring from actually doing artwork or anything like that, but this is a matter of my income. And when I turn 70, I will have a steady income. Anything I do past that is just, great. But um uh and that's sort of like my friend Mike Vosberg. He went ahead and just did comics after years of working in animation and sometimes film, such as he worked on uh the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe things.
Uh, Alrighty.
I want to say
So
Nausicaa.
we don't
That's
really
not
know.
right.
We don't really know when this project will appear, but it's damn well going to be something to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm close to being. I'm need to go over with you what I've written so far. I think I have the story. What we need to do is like the basics, which is basically saying uh, I need to break down the story into pages, maybe just through page breakdowns, and then I will know how many pages it's going to be, and then like then tightening the script. But the way I like to work is I like the words and the images to be together. If I have something I like on the written page, but it doesn't really work in the visual area, something's got to give, and it's
Mhm.
got to always go to the visual.
Yes,
You but I think the storyline is strong, and we're going to end at a decent. At this time, the story is going to be as far as the everything that we've had before. It's going to be done, and
great.
if you want to do a new chapter after that, we can pick up. There's a place of picking it up. Certain characters don't have to reappear. It could be new villains. It could be like we just mentioned. You know, we don't know about Breeze's dad, but obviously there's a strong connection with his. And here's something else. We have a timeless place where you could reach back. It's almost like time travel. What
Those
if?
are tricky. You got to be really tricky.
What
You know
if?
those.
What if? Okay. Maybe it's only a window. Maybe it's, but I see some possibilities. But but at least what we started, we could say, good. It fits. It's one story, and now it's done.
I will tell you, right? The Black Enchantress, one of our characters, is fully capable of time travel. She does not do it, right? Because it creates problems. The only time, and we're establishing this in an upcoming coming story, that she will do time travel is if she's absolutely convinced it won't cause a problem, or if she knows that she has already done it, right?
Yeah, I don't. It's kind of old having a character go back and try and change the past.
Yeah, don't do that.
I don't want to do that. There may be a reason. There are other reasons for visiting people in the past, if only to visit them. You know, and said
Okay.
like it's like, you know, go back like a couple days after the last time he saw her and visit her again in a way that's not going to change anything, but it'd be pleasant for him, or it'd be something, just that act of
Nice for
love,
her.
you know, and you know, that kind of thing.
Okay, let's not go down that path right now.
Well, we're basically we're opening up a whole new storyline right here, and
Yeah, let's not do that.
let's cool off.
Let's call this quits. Leave this here. Leave people with a little bit of suspense for this project, which is going to be great because it's going to be by Tim Burgard, right?
Yeah.
And let's call this a wrap. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Tim, thank you so much for being here. People, you're seeing this. Like and subscribe to the Heroic Voice YouTube channel every week. We're going to do one every week, try to get them up every Saturday. I'm not sure who we have next week, but we're going to have somebody. Thank you again, Tim. Have
All
a
right.
good evening.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.